Welcome to another edition of Ovation Insights. I'm your host, Aaron Ellis. We love to showcase the talent we have on our platform. And today I'm actually joined by someone who I can also call a friend. And I also have personal experience towards some of the things that we're going to talk about. Now, we're bringing on today a gentleman named Jon Christian. And Jon is the founder of a strategic advisory firm called Black Point Standard. He has over a decade of experience working with over 1,000 clients, Fortune 500 companies, literally specializing in human performance, working with CEOs, professional athletes, influential leaders and icons, and even Navy SEALs. Jon literally works with the elite of the elite. Jon, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Going good, man. It's good to see you. I know we get to see each other often than just this, but I'm actually excited to dive into some of these things from a different perspective today. So I'd really love to showcase a few things today. One, how you came up with what you teach now, how you came up with the methodologies that you take into corporations. Obviously, I love to share the whole spectrum of the story, so that the struggles that you went through, the aha moments, those pivotal moments that actually you are now paying forward in what you do. And then, we'll get into some personal stuff too, and let people know who Jon Christian is, behind the scenes as well. So whatever that leads you to start with, let's start there.
Absolutely. Yeah, the journey started pretty young. Like even when I was a young kid, I was always very adventurous and, pushing and challenging my limits. And I got married, young as well, when I was about 23. And about 9 months later, we had a baby, Amber, which is my daughter. And, I got into the banking industry to support my family, and did that for about a decade. And it wasn't really fulfilling. I wasn't feeling 100% fulfilled and happy with that track in my life. And my daughter came to me one day. She said, "Dad, do you love what you do?" And I couldn't honestly look in the eyes and tell her what I did. So I needed to start leading by example. So I left the banking industry, started doing things like skydiving, bungee jumping, and endurance races, and backpacking 3/4 of the coast of Costa Rica, and really getting in touch with myself and what I truly wanted to do. And that led me to developing a methodology called conscious human performance. So connecting that metaphysical and physical experience in order to accelerate the progress. So I noticed in that year that I had accomplished more in 1 year than I had in the past 10 years of my life. And I ended up, getting mentored by one of my childhood surfing heroes, Brad Gerlach, was one of the number one surfers in the world. He taught me how to overcome fear. So I started learning from the best in the world and formulating this experience and methodology in order to optimize human performance. And it's been an absolutely amazing journey.
So your program or your methodology is called Conscious Human Performance, correct?
So the program is, Conscious Human Performance is the base of the 5 Challenges program. So through the process of, evolving and creating these new experiences, and then eventually working with clients and putting them through these experiences, I developed the 5 Challenges program and retreat. And, Conscious Human Performance is infused in those experiences. So inside of the coaching and inside the experiences.
So I got a question for you. You mentioned the blending or the merging of the physical and the metaphysical. I know that's been something that has been a passion of mine. It's something I've been doing in my life for the last 20 plus years. I also know that it's something that previously, and even in a handful of years ago, wasn't necessarily looked at, especially in the corporate realm, on bringing in that metaphysical or potentially. I even heard the term woo-woo and whatnot. But what I'm seeing now, and I'm curious on your take on this, I'm seeing a lot more corporations, a lot more, you could say, awakening or consciousness in corporate like companies in how they want to approach things. And they may not call it the blend of metaphysical and physical like you would, but can you speak towards that and how you approach those kind of topics and help those corporate-minded folks understand what you mean when you say blending those two?
Absolutely. I mean, I think most people can relate, anybody in a leadership position or an organization in general, getting into that environment, that culture, there's a feeling of achievement and stress and, burnout and things like that. So there's a lot of that going on inside the corporations. And a lot of that has to do with like the internal conversations and the experiences that people are having. And what happens is, as a result of that, if your individuals are operating a certain level of awareness and or consciousness, you're going to have a corporate culture that is, either on the positive side or in the toxic side. So there's a lot of people experiencing toxic corporate environments, which are reducing production and efficiency. And then you have people that are misaligned in what they're doing. So we have a big challenge in corporations where people are quitting while they're still there. So what do we do with that? And that's costing millions, if not billions of dollars to the organizations. So inside of corporations, what we do is we bring awareness to where people are operating on an individual standpoint, which then drives the level of consciousness or awareness of the corporation itself. So if you have a very achievement-oriented organization, which I'm not saying achievement is bad, but you're going to experience like a lot of ups and downs. Like especially if you think about sales organizations and burnout with sales individuals, because they're focused on the results and not actually how they're being and operating on an everyday basis. So there's different levels of consciousness, 1 through 7 generally, anywhere from feeling, like a victim or things are happening to you, to operating at high levels. So evolving those organizations to truly perform at the highest levels possible.
So it sounds to me like you really go a lot deeper. You take a lot deeper dive into really the essence of the issues that a corporation is facing, not just the surface problems that show up as potentially the symptoms to the deeper problems. Would it be correct to say that?
Exactly. Yeah, because you could teach soft skills to people, and if they're just going out and doing it and going through the motions and not necessarily embodying it. So it's about, being a loving, compassionate, powerful leader versus, learning how to communicate effectively. Learning how to communicate and listen effectively is important. But if internally, you don't really care about what you're doing, you're burnt out, you're worried about your family at home and supporting yourself, it's very difficult for people to actually believe that you really care.
So you mentioned loving, compassionate leadership, and you mentioned communication. There's a couple hot topics right now going around that a lot of people have been asking me questions on and whatnot. And they just popped into my mind. I didn't plan on discussing these with you, but I'm really curious on your take. What is your take based on your methodologies, your understanding of conscious human performance and the work you've done in a lot of the layoffs that are happening these days and the way those layoffs are happening? There's been a lot of complaints that people aren't being treated fairly. They aren't been communicated with properly, and they're just getting fired. Literally without any real reason or in a blanket way that doesn't even give them any kind of feedback on why. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's many times lack of transparency, organizations being afraid to communicate what's going on in the organization to prepare their individuals. It's a fear-based mentality. So it's like, if we are transparent about what's going on, we're going to lose people before the actual time that we need to lay them off. So, there's a lot of scarcity, a lot of fear, rampant in society and also in corporations. So how is leadership making decisions and how are they treating those employees? So those things are going to happen. But, if you're leading up into that situation, being completely transparent and also allowing yourself to, value your employees and getting connected to what they're truly passionate about, they're not going to be upset when those things happen because you've served them at the highest level and maybe they're working on something themselves, and that's not the worst thing. There's times where I've gotten laid off in my career and, it's not fun, but if you empower them to understand even the fact that they're not really a victim in the situation, it's just a situation that's happening, they're not going to fall into like a depression or, think that this is defining them. So they define who they are. If they're a loving, compassionate leader, that's true regardless of whether they're working or they're not and looking for something. So keeping people on the right mental frame as those situations are happening is something that corporations can do to help those that are, that they are laying off.
That is probably one of the best, most complete answers I have received over the last few weeks. I really appreciate that, Jon. Another issue that I've seen recently too, and I'm curious on your take on this, is the merging back into the in-person workplace, and of a lot of people who got used to working virtually over COVID, and there's somewhat of a tug of war going between the employees and the companies. And And I don't want to necessarily steer your answer on this, but I know there has been talks about a lot of the old school mentality on wanting everybody to be there in person. And we had this, this aspect of our lives called COVID, where everybody was forced to not be in person. And there's a little bit of there's resistance there. What are your thoughts around how companies and corporations can face that problem with employees not wanting to come back to work, wanting to remain virtual, potentially even evolving into some sort of hybrid?
Right. Yeah, it goes back to understanding your employees and the people that are working for you, and not thinking one way is right or one way is wrong. So what if we looked at it from the standpoint of, one employee might thrive in a group environment, and their productivity soars when they're in person with a group of people, and that's their thing. And then another individual, they are the most productive, locking themselves in their bedroom and working, for 8 hours straight with no interruptions. So I would look at it as not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and looking at every single individually and really figuring out what's going to serve that individual at the highest level and what's going to serve the company at the highest level. So, oftentimes there's solutions that are forced across organizations, as opposed to looking at as from a systemic standpoint of each individual unit, and how those individuals come together as an ecosystem, completely, in order to complete that mission that the company is on.
So from what you're saying, what I'm gathering right now, listening to you, also I've known you for a while and stuff, so we've conversed on some of these things before. You really know what you're doing. You've really taken the time to really not only learn what you teach within yourself, but teach it and continue to expand your knowing. Like the whole statement of a leader knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way, and you continue to also grow the way, like for yourself. Now, I'm curious, when I talk to people who do speaking engagements, or they do workshops, or they do consulting and advisory, how do you take something that sounds extremely refined and make it unique and specialized to the specific client? Is that something you do? Are you able to take your methodologies and craft them and mold them to your specific clients? And how do you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that, there's so many different solutions out there, so many different ways for us to get to that path that we were meant to be on. And honestly, we're on that path all the time, even if we may not think we are. So I have developed an assessment to get a baseline, starting point, based on 80 questions that people can take. And once you go through it, usually I can get an idea of, what their fulfillment level is. And people operate in different areas of their life in different levels of consciousness. So, you may have somebody who is, doing great in their career, making a lot of money, and, their health is completely, off, or their relationship is completely off, or maybe they're in great shape and taking care of themselves, and, their financial situation is off. So they're operating in different levels of consciousness, different ways of thinking, and different modalities of life. So yeah, there's a baseline assessment, and then from there we can look, on a quarterly basis, and really quantify, like, taking it from the abstract to the practical, because a lot of these skills, the tangibles aren't always tangible, but you can actually, put that tangible aspect to these conversations around awareness and consciousness and self-development.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hey, Jon, is there any special or specific industries that you specialize in, or are you able to adapt to any industry? Meaning, do you specialize in marketing and sales more than manufacturing, more financial services, or is there a sweet spot for you, or have you found yourself? I mean, because going over, just the different kind of clients, we're literally talking about Fortune 500 companies all the way to Navy SEALs. So I'm curious on how that translates in your ventures and in your partnerships and your working environment that you're in right now.
Yeah, I've had so many different phases of my career, in learning development. So I've done learning development for Fortune 500 companies, and done the change management, and understand that world and what it looks like, and some of the challenges with implementing change in a large organization. I've worked with startups, I've worked with medium-sized organizations as well. I have a decade of experience in the financial industry, so I understand what leaders and employees are going through that in that organization. And I have a good background in marketing as well. So I understand. I was chief marketing officer for a small firm, so I understand leading those organizations and also creating outcomes in that. So I'd say, banking and marketing are primary industries, but I've worked with people, in the real estate industry across the board, in my career. So there's quite a diverse range of client experience that I've worked with.
Let me ask you this question. And I'm not coming from a military background. I understand, at least, I'll admit my understanding comes from television and movies and stuff. But when we talk about Navy SEALs, we're talking about a very high level of a high level individual, someone who can truly execute at a high level. And then we also talk about you working with CEOs. Mm-hmm. What is it like working with Navy SEALs and CEOs, and how do you take from both of those camps to teach the other?
Well, when it comes down to at the end of the day, everybody's human. So even the guys that, are going out there and risking their life and limb, for us, and have honed their skills over years and years, they're human too. And they face challenges just like us, everything. So, being able to come alongside somebody that has skill sets in certain areas, but maybe struggling in others, so it's about supporting them and meeting them where they're at, as human beings, and treating it as such, and understanding and listening to what's going on beyond the who they are, as far as like a CEO or a Navy SEAL. It's like, who are you really, beyond that? And a lot of people lose themselves in those roles, especially military. You get out of the military and you've had your role defined for you for maybe a decade or two. And then, there was one experience that I ran with a group of veterans, and I had this weighted backpack, and I had them hold it over their head and just ask them, "Who are you?" And breaking down in tears, not knowing who they were because they were defined. That also happens in corporate America. I've talked to people that work for Google, and Google's mission is so strong it sucks you in, and you forget who you are. So I love helping people to get connected to truly who they are, and then stepping into that and start working, whether it's in a new career or in their existing career, and or getting into entrepreneurship and pursuing that. So everybody has some sort of challenge, and we're all human. And if we can come together in that, and a lot of times in our journey, it feels isolating and alone. So bringing people together in community and helping them operate at the highest levels possible is something I'm very passionate about.
Wow. That was an actually great answer. And it really segues into one of my other questions I have for you is who is Jon Christian? I'd love to know who you are. I know who you are to a degree, but I'd love you to share who you are, even on a personal level, family level, your own personal aspirations, struggles, and whatnot. Who are you?
Yeah. So that came down to, a loving, compassionate, powerful leader is who I am. And that shows up in various ways. Unleashing human potential is what I do. Anything that I do has to do with unleashing human potential. I am a father of two absolutely amazing human beings, Amber and Brendan. My daughter is 24. My son is 16. I've been married 26 years to my wife, Jennifer, who is absolutely amazing and has been completely supportive over this journey through the ups and downs to get to where I'm at today. I love adventure. I surf. I've been surfing for 30 years. And, it's just, I feel very blessed to be where I'm at today and to be able to support others in that journey. But what it came down to is feeling alive and awakened inside. So that's my purpose, is to help people feel alive and awakened inside. And that comes, to the surface in multiple ways. And, the whole thing that got me down this journey was my daughter asking me that question, and leading by example is what's gotten me to where I am today.
I literally just had this thought to tell the listeners to go back and listen to this whole interview again, because I saw congruency and structural integrity throughout the entire thing. And then as I was having that thought, you brought up your daughter in the question, which is what you started out with. today
Mhm.
when we start talking. So I do encourage everybody to go back and listen to this. You'll hear the congruency and the integrity in what Jon is saying and how he lives his life and what he does and what he brings to the table and what he brings to the world. It's amazing. Jon, final thought, final thing. What can we leave people with? If you had one last thought to share, one last insight, what would that be?
It would be to never give up, on your dreams. A lot of times it sneaks up on you, so if you're putting something off, sometimes that can be an hour, a day, a month, a year. So don't let those dreams be put off. Take that leap of faith into the unknown and know that, it's not going to be a perfect journey and there'll be challenges along the way. But know that, when you take that leap of faith, things will fall into place, and you'll be surprised at what life will look like, a decade from today.
Wow. Well said. Again, my name is Aaron Ellis. This is Ovation Insights. We've been talking with Jon Christian today. Jon, thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to the world hearing this.
Thank you, Aaron.